My name is Christine and I'm Rhiannon's mum. Rhiannon had not been very well for about 4 years with headaches and dizziness and things that we'd never really got to the bottom of. But at 17 she, because she ice skates, she'd actually moved to living in Coventry Monday to Friday to be able to train in Coventry. One day phoned me up and said, "Mum, I've got to ring you up because they've told me I've got to ring you up." And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Well, they're telling me I need to be able to go to A&E because I didn't feel very well. I got really bad headache, felt really dizzy, was told to get off the ice, went and sat in the cafe, and then I'm told that I fell off the chair and I couldn't lift my arm up and I couldn't take my skate off, and I've been and had a cup of coffee and I'm all right now, and I think I'm fine and I don't think I need to do anything, but they've made me ring you up." She'd been told that they thought that she'd had TIA. There was no mention of the possibility of having had a stroke at that point. And I picked her up, and so it was very worrying, but really at the same time we had no idea really as to what exactly it was that had happened, and because of her age, no real assistance in actually anybody really having a huge amount of interest in what it was that had exactly happened. And from a parental point of view, that's probably the worst thing, is that dealing with somebody young having had a stroke, because we didn't find out she'd had a stroke until 6 weeks later. And it's, as a parent, trying to be able to actually get to the bottom of what's happening. It is quite difficult. It was Rhiannon's dad that actually got in touch with Different Strokes. But Rhiannon had actually found you on the internet when she found out that she'd actually had a stroke, and she'd read things that you'd actually got on the internet and read about what you did, etc. And Steve actually phoned up because the main things that Rhiannon had problems with were all cognitive, particularly a memory, reading problems. Those were the things that we knew in the first instance that she was aware of that she had problems with. And it was knowing how to be able to get help for those, because luckily we have a friend who's a physio, and had it been physical things we would have known exactly where to go and what to do. But cognitive problems are a lot more difficult to deal with because they're invisible, nobody can see them. The GP's attitude was, "Well, you look perfectly all right." And it's only when you know somebody well or you spend time with them that you realise they've got cognitive problems. And that was quite difficult. So Steve, Rhiannon's dad, phoned up Different Strokes and actually got some help. And from then, that has been the most huge help, in the fact that Rhiannon had contact with other people that she could relate to and could relate to her. And so the feeling that she was developing of being isolated actually started to go away. That's probably the biggest single thing emotionally that's made the biggest difference to all of us, because Rhiannon actually feeling as though she's got somebody to talk to is reassuring as a parent. The problem that Rhiannon had is she wasn't able to acknowledge what it was that had happened. I think partly because her personality is such that, and not having been well prior to the stroke, she automatically ignores things to do with her health. So when she had the MRI done and we were told she'd had a stroke, it was a shock, but her natural response is to just ignore it. And it took her time before she actually slowly could start to deal with and process that, but also because the stroke affected her cognitive abilities so much. She didn't have the ability to actually process the information. So I think what we tried to do was actually talk to her about what had happened to her without scaring her, but at the same time to try to be able to get her to process that information. And then once that information actually starts to be processed and to be dealt with, then there's a huge amount of emotional problems to be able to deal with. She's not a person that normally gets very upset. She was never an emotional teenager that burst into tears. But yet, after about 6 weeks after the MRI and we'd had the diagnosis, then she started to process what had happened. And at that point, she did start to have, probably 3 times a week to start with, she would not be able to sleep, and we'd be up until 4 o'clock in the morning where she'd just be in floods of tears. And it's just having the patience to be able to actually sit and listen, but at the same time sometimes you need to be able to just not push but prod a little bit for them to be able to actually talk. Now it's every so many weeks she'll have a bad day and she'll not be able to sleep and she'll get upset, but it's gone from being 3 times a week in September to now probably once every 3 or 4 weeks. And she's getting a lot better at being able to process the feelings herself, but it's just been a slow process. So I think you just need time and you just need support. But I think on top of that, as a young adult, they need people that they can relate to, because one of the most isolating things as a parent that we found was that we couldn't understand what she was saying. Normally with things that your children go through, you've had some experience and you can draw on that experience, and you think that you're talking from the point of view of having some knowledge to be able to actually explain from. This was a situation where although I've known older people have strokes, it's a completely different thing. So she felt very isolated, and we felt as though we couldn't help. So once she'd actually got somebody to be able to talk to, she then talked to us about what other people had said, and that helped us then be able to help Rhiannon when she was actually talking. So I think it's that need of having a group of other people, because I think in young people particularly having a stroke, it's like any neurological condition with young people, it's so isolating, because it's not what people expect or have experienced very often. So it's talking and getting to talk to other groups, and lots of people even though we're in North Yorkshire, there's lots of people that have actually heard of different strokes. So many people that when we actually spoke to other people, they said, oh yes, I've heard of them. Me cousin or a friend's daughter or somebody had a stroke, and we've heard of different strokes. So I think it's that talking is probably the single most helpful thing that you can do as a parent.